I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays. Let's start with some wide receiver talk. So, Alex, who are some receiver names that you are specifically going to be looking out for, and why?
So I know that there's a couple big names that people are focused on, right? I've already seen Jalen Royals in the comments. I know your guys, Pat Bryant. So I'll go kind of a little off the rip here. I'll give you a couple. One that's definitely a fit, and one that I'm worried is absolutely not a fit, but I'm so curious about. Xavier Restrepo. Absolutely. Yeah. Josh McDaniels. Look, I really like Pop Douglas. I think he's a good player. He's not the kind of player that's going to be a primary slot in Josh McDaniels' offense. He's just proven he's not that kind of volume guy. Restrepo, I think, can be. He's not the biggest guy, but he's a little bigger, and we saw him take some big hits at Miami, and he handled it well. Tough receiver, reliable receiver, explosiveness, explosive, good after the catch. He profiles like a Patriot. So he's going to be a guy I think you're looking for to have a big week. And then the one that might not be a fit, but I'm fascinated by. So I think some of the criticism of Josh McDaniels is overblown. One thing with him that does worry me, he's never been good with scheme touch players that can kind of figure out creative ways to get the ball in the hands. Case in point, evidence number one, Jonnu Smith. You look at the way he struggled in New England and the success he's had since with his usage being different. So I'm nervous talking about scheme touch players. But if there's one scheme touch player McDaniels figured out, at least in his second stint, it was Cordero Patterson. And figuring out how to use him as a running back and use him as a slot receiver and get kind of gadgety with him, that worked. I don't know that he fully tapped into Patterson's potential the way the Falcons and Steelers did, but he was able to get more out of Cordero Patterson than I think you realistically expected. So that brings us to Savion Williams from TCU. 6'5", 20, not just fast, but he's quick. He moves well. He can change direction, especially for a guy his size. It's all very but he's not exactly a polished wide receiver. And he spent half this year playing running back. So he's not a guy like he's built like
an injury?
No, he just did it.
Okay. God, talk about Cordero Patterson.
Right. No, yeah. This is exactly where I'm going. So if you just look at him, you think, all right, it's an X receiver. But he's not, because he's not refined enough to do that. But he's so athletic. He's so physically dominant. It's like, how do we get this guy involved? You're not going to have a 6'5", 220-pound running back full time. Yep. That's just not going to work. But finding creative, I'm just interested to see kind of what he does. Does he work with the running backs? What kind of routes is he running? And I'm really nervous about giving him to Josh McDaniels, but I like the player so much that there's a part of me that's just like Cordero Patterson 2.0, Cordero Patterson 2.0, Cordero Patterson 2.0. So I have no expectations for Savion Williams. I'm just fascinated to see what happens with him on the field and throughout this process.
I will slightly push back on I feel like I'm the only one who is of this opinion with Jonnu, but I just feel like that year there were so many fine players that did deserve touches, and he was so inconsistent. Watching him catch the ball was tough.
Well, there were other guys too.
It looked awkward. It takes him a while to get his footing, and it felt like Hunter's better. It was so obvious that Hunter was better. Then you also had Jacoby, you had Kendrick, and then Nelson Aguilar was just on the field to be the X. So I remember being like, I want more Jonnu, and then I studied it and was just like, I don't know how you do anymore. He just is really weird. But anyway, that said, if it's a Cordero Patterson once again, that would be really cool. And then hopefully you pray that down the line he can develop and turn into more of a consistent, well-rounded receiver. Where do you think he ends up going, actually? Because physical freak, but such a projection. That feels like maybe mid-late day 2, 3rd round. What are you thinking?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of variance there because different teams are going to view him different ways. You're going to have teams that not just we think he's the 50th best player, we think he's the 70th. There's going to be teams that view him almost think kind of like Travis Hunter, right? Where all right, well, we think he's primarily a receiver. We're going to mix him in as a little bit of a running back, or we're going to try to turn him into a tight end and have him return kicks, or, we're going to have him do this or that. It's going to be so all over the place. I don't think he gets outside of the top 100 just because of that athleticism. My guess would be his ceiling is probably he maybe sneaks into the top 40. But my guess is he's going somewhere, and that's if he has a great process. My guess is he's going somewhere probably late second, early third round, like you said.
Yep. So over here, I'm going one. I gotta talk Pat Bryant. I have to, because he was the first draft crush I had this season. As soon as I kind of stumbled on him, because I was looking over stats and I was trying to find who could get the most deep production, because it felt like T. Higgins, they may not be able to get him, and there aren't a lot of other guys that you think could be long-term answers for you, and you might not pick 10 in the draft or early on. So where can you find those guys? I saw Pat Bryant. Like, his numbers were very good on deep targets. Looked at the highlight tape first just to get an idea of the game, and I was like, oh my God, for somebody I've never heard of and who people really aren't talking about very much, this kid's impressive. Like, he's got the size. He's the real X receiver, which this offense hadn't had in so long. He doesn't have great vertical speed, which is where some of the deep stuff is a little bit tricky. Like, there were some just wide open targets that he was able to capitalize on. But you see him win off the line consistently. He is so smooth off the line of scrimmage. He's also physical. He's very aware and has a good feel for when guys are trying to jam him and get him off his mark. And he doesn't really get pressed. That makes up for the lack of great vertical speed, because he's going to win off the line and win quickly. He can win on slants. Reminds me a lot of T. Higgins after the catch, in the way that he just gets the ball very quickly, tucks it away, and then immediately looks upfield to try to get more yards, fights for extra yards, is physical after the catch. Like, very much a T. Jennings or T. Higgins light in my eyes. And then on top of it, he's tough as a run blocker, which you really love, kind of a tone setter. He was a team captain. And then he could have transferred. I believe there was a head coaching change after he had committed, or when he was already there for a year, one or the other, and he actually stayed. Yeah. And when the coach talked about him in an interview, like, he cried. This is a guy that is very highly regarded when it comes to that football program over at Illinois. So I just think if you're talking like a fourth-round receiver where you're kind of throwing a dart at a guy that's a good part of your program, will contribute on special teams, and also could fit a need that you have, I really like Pat Bryant. And then another guy that I'm intrigued by and is becoming one of my like mid-round darlings is Jalen Royals, because size-wise, he's perfect for what Elliott Wolf looks for. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds, was first-team All-Mountain West. Strengths, looking at friend of the channel, Daniel Harm's profile on him. Route running, stem manipulation, acceleration, yards after the catch. These are all things that Mike Vrabel said he really wanted. Now, one thing there that doesn't stand out is the catch radius part. I know he's really big on that, but getting after it when you actually have the ball in your hand and also being able to get open are really good strengths of his. Some concerns are physicality through the route, release variety, press comfort. So may need to be more of a Z early on, but he feels like he has the kind of skill set, probably going to be a day 2 player, that could be a good value in a class where it feels like it's very middle heavy. There's not a whole lot of guys at the top that you're really excited about. So if he kind of slips and they've got a lot of their needs already filled in the trenches, Jalen Royals is a guy that I'm pretty intrigued by.
Yeah, that's another guy that we talk about. Can you find McDaniels the next Edelman, Welker, right? That sort of guy. And can he be a high volume target? He has the size for it. I think he has the reliability for it. His ability to create after the catch, because that's not a guy you're going to be sending vertically a ton. So he's going to need to. And when I say that guy, I mean that role, right? Is not a player you're going to be sending vertically a ton. So can he create with the ball in his hands? He's certainly on the list. For players in that spot. You know, it's kind of becoming clear. You're starting to see whether it's Jalen Royals, Xavier Restrepo, Emeka Egbuka's at the top of this list. Even Nick Nash, who's in the Shrine Bowl. I don't know why I did this before I did the Senior Bowl preview with you. I'm working on my Shrine Bowl preview right now for 98.5thesportshub.com.
Nice.
So I have all those names stuck in my head. We can touch on that a little bit at the end if you want. But yeah, you're starting to kind of see those names, hear those names a lot. That are, potential slots in a Josh McDaniels offense.
That's exciting. Also, real quick, Ladd McConkey is not an X for the Chargers. FYI, I was right. I was wrong about him not really being a Z. That was where I did kind of screw up, but that's okay. I will.
Well, that offense, Z and slot are kind of the same thing. There's a lot of overlap.
Fair enough. He's like a Julian Edelman kind of Z, where it's like he's not actually a Z. It's more like they move him around so that he's never actually getting touched. But it's okay. I'll accept responsibility, and I will sit in my shame. Support us and sign up at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the app today and use code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5.